as we're investing in stormwater, which is going to involve a lot of exfiltration trenches and pumping, that we also consider, as we're designing these stormwater projects, that we also consider other climate threats such as heat, mobility, greenhouse gas emissions, and specifically thinking about using green infrastructure and natural systems, which many other cities around the world and even our neighboring counties are using in major stormwater and in infrastructure projects.
Thank you. Madam Chair?
Yes?
Thank you. Amy, thank you. How much of the Climate Resilience Committee's recommendation is already included in the Stormwater Master Plan that you would just like to see bolstered and ensured, or are these all new things that are not included in the Stormwater Master Plan?
The Stormwater Master Plan doesn't get into this level of detail in terms of design. This is actually going to the next step when we're asking designers to come up with projects, that this is at that level where the staff is going to be asking them to include these. I will say that CDM Smith, and we spent many hours with them, with the Climate Resilience Committee. They're very much in favor of this kind of approach. It's not necessarily what they do, or in terms of their, I think they can do it, but they didn't present those solutions to us. But I think they're very much, it's included in the plan as a concept. It's just the details aren't quite there yet because they'll come at a later date.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay?
Is the director still here? Would this be a capital or a public? There it is. Actually, if you could each take a lectern, that'll be helpful, just in case I have questions for both.
Oh, no, I don't need to. No. You might.
Thank you, Director Santana. In your review of the recommendations of the Climate Resilience Committee, what are your thoughts on including those within the Stormwater Master Plan? Would it make it more robust? Would it make it burdensome? Would it make it too cost burdensome? What are your concerns?
So specifically in the Stormwater Master Plan, obviously that makes the recommendation as far as level of service and what the infrastructure improvements there would be required to be implemented. With respect to some of these considerations, we're already seeing that, right? So we're already seeing that on Brickell Bay Drive. That project's already taking into consideration thinking along these lines, and it's a very specific roadway project that'll incorporate all sorts of different solutions that we haven't done in other places. We're also looking at that at Jose Marti Park. Those are also looking at different types of implementations as far as how you treat that waterfront.
So you're on the same page.
So with that said, some of the options that are there when we're coming in and we're doing the larger projects, then it's going to come down to dollars and also a consideration towards maintenance. But one thing that we are already doing is that when we're coming in and doing drainage projects, we're recovering swales, we're planting an incredible amount of new trees going in, and at the same time, I know that the planning department, working with Curtis and Rogers, has been doing the Southwest Streetscape Master Plan, and they've been looking at additional solutions in the public right-of-way that go along this. So not so much in the Stormwater Master Plan, but most definitely when we're considering stuff like the Streetscape Master Plan, those ideas are being brought forth, and once we bring these projects towards design and construction, we will absolutely fold those in to whatever extent is possible. If it's going to double the cost of a project, then those are decisions that have to be made at.
I don't see anything here that would do that. Madam Chair, I'd be happy to sponsor legislation on a future agenda to bring these recommendations into the Stormwater Master Plan in a codified way. So, thank you. Thank you to the Climate Resilience Committee for the recommendations. Thank you, Director.
Commissioner Manolo, would you like to weigh in on this report?
Not at this point in time.
Manolo.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will accept the report. There's no further discussion for this item. Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
The next item we will hear is discussion item DI3. There's a recommendation on mangroves.
So the Climate Resilience Committee passed a resolution and asking this body to eliminate the prohibition of planting mangroves along the Miami Baywalk Greenway along Biscayne Bay. As I mentioned earlier today, it's important for the city to have a range of options for managing the effects of climate change. And the Climate Resilience Committee passed this resolution so that we do not limit our options by banning mangroves in the Baywalk. This could hamstring coastal engineers and environmental consultants working on the Baywalk project. They are the appropriate professionals to recommend the best shoreline protection strategy and quarterback it through the federal, state, and local environmental permitting. They need every tool available.
Okay, now, with this recommendation, it doesn't prohibit the planting of mangroves, but it also doesn't require the planting of mangroves. So it would be up to the area's needs, wants, the wishes of the community, correct?
Exactly. This is not an either or, it's an and.
Mr. Vice Chair, would you like to weigh in on this?
Yes. We had voted on this before. Okay, we had voted on this before, right? Yeah, I was saying we had voted on this before, and we voted no mangroves, right? Why is it being sent to us again? Don't they understand what we meant when we voted? I mean, I'm going to read to you right here. I'm going to read to you right from one of the top scientists in one of our universities. Yu Peng Lee, she's a Florida International University researcher who published multiple papers attempting to quantify exactly how much protections mangroves offer. And she says it takes about half a mile worth of mangroves to lop off even 1 foot of storm surge. Even 1 mile of mangroves, she said, I don't think will significantly decrease surge. Yu Peng Lee stated. Now, I could go on and on and on, but there's a difference, and there's a group of people that see it one way. The majority of us up here saw it another way. And this is not that every few months, every quarter, we get hammered with it again and again and again, hoping that somehow with a Hail Mary pass or the typical pressure, over at 2103 Cora Way or whatever the address is, you bring in some of these outsiders from the city of Miami and they start pressuring us and we're going to cave in. I'm certainly not. So that's what I have to say.
Well, I think maybe if there are areas in the city of Miami that would like mangroves.
Well, that's another story.
Right, that it shouldn't be, because for example, I live on the bay. I don't want to look out and see mangroves right under my seawall. I just don't think it's an appropriate place for the mangroves. But there may be other places for mangroves. I understand their utility and their usefulness. Like, for example, there are a bunch of mangroves on Virginia Key. But I just don't think it would be appropriate for where I live, and I live on the bay. So, I don't know, Commissioner Russell, would you like to weigh in?
Thank you, Madam Chair. Of course, I do disagree. I don't believe that the representations that Mr. Cruz made this morning are accurate. Mangroves absolutely contribute to holding the soil together, reducing erosion. To show a picture after a hurricane of a beach washed out and say that mangroves don't actually help with erosion is misleading. I think this all comes down to how we value our views versus the protection of our future. And so those who want to protect their views will build a case of why these don't actually work. But they do, and it is a trade-off. My understanding here is political. The will is not here for the Baywalk itself, the Baywalk, to have mangroves. And that legislation that passed, the Baywalk ordinance, is going to be incredible for this city. And the trade-off we had to make in that moment, and I'm sure that the Climate Resilience Committee disagrees, is that was the concession. That was the concession I had to accept to get the votes to pass that item so that we will have a completed Baywalk for the future. Perhaps the will change over time, but for now, clearly the political will is not to have mangroves on the Baywalk, so I don't believe we'll be seeing that legislation.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner Reyes?
I understood that the Baywalk and all the different changes that we did, and correct me if I'm wrong, Commissioner Carollo, Chair, or you, that remember that we required that now the Baywalk, it was raised in order for us in order to protect that city or that area from surge, from king tide, et cetera, et cetera. When I voted for it, it was my belief that that was enough. That was enough. Now I don't understand why we have to plant or do something else. You see, like planting mangrove. I agree 100% with Madam Chair that one of our jewels is our bay. You see, and the water. Why should we have an impediment that people cannot have a clear view of the bay and the water and all that? Because we want to plant mangrove, which is not proven. There is an argument pro and con, and we will be ruining. You take, for example, beautiful thing that has Jose Marti Park, and I'm using this as an example. It's the view of the water, the river, and everything. You see, if you take that away from that park, you're going to do the same thing that was done in Bayfront Park. As you recall, because you are an old-timer, you recall before Mr. Naguchi came and he did the renovation of Bayfront Park. It was beautiful to just go by Biscayne Boulevard, look to the right, and that was a beautiful view of the bay. Now you don't see nothing but, a burn over there, you see. And I think that's part of our treasure of the city of Miami. We shouldn't be impeding our view of our beautiful bay and a beautiful river and a beautiful sea. If we can do it, with the Baywalk protects the city and that part of the city from being flooded, hey, let that be it, man. That is my opinion. That is my opinion.
Is there a will to take any action on this discussion item?
Clearly not, unfortunately. But I accept that political will, and that's politics. That's what I needed to agree to in order to get the Baywalk ordinance.
No, that's not politics, that's democracy. Democracy.
Okay.
It's a majority. But
Okay.
if I could, Madam Chair, because what the Baywalk ordinance did will connect and complete the Baywalk and bring it into our park system, both the public and private lands, allowing our administration to negotiate with private owners so that we don't have to wait another 40 years like we have already. And so if I have to give up mangroves on the Baywalk in order to have achieved that for this moment, that was the bet I made back then. And I'm glad we have that ordinance. So we may disagree, but it is the will of the majority, so there is no action on this item.
Okay, thank you. At this time, we're going to take up our planning and zoning items. May I have a motion first? Are there any items that you guys would like to pull for discussion?
Yes, Madam Chair, I'd like to know,
PZs. Commissioner Russell?
I'd like to know for the administration if we're ready to take up 8 and 9 this afternoon. Those certainly would have to be taken separately regarding the Brickell City Center amendment.
We are ready to take those up separately, so we can
Got it. So-
So those are
On the
lasting.
Brickell City Center, Mr. Manager,
Yes, sir.
I hope that they shown you exactly what was shown to me last night. And there's going to be a trade-off that they're going to build a permanent station within about a year and a half, I'm told.
No, we vetted that option. It's not a good option for fire in terms of increased enhancement for any real benefit beyond what we already have at Fire Station 4 as it is. So we've worked on some other compromises with regards to location, with regards to timing, and there's some amendments that have been made to the agreement, which we're happy to give to the commission so you guys can have those as a reference. You have those now?
All right, then, yeah.
This is
then-
a proffer by the administration or by the applicant?
Both. It's a, we
already-
negotiated on
Okay,
that.
so I want to go in order. Let's go in order. Do I have a motion to pass PZ 1, 2, and 6?
Madam Chair, this is Lakeisha, the planning director. So for PZ1, there are some changes for consideration before voting.
Okay, what are those changes?
So the applicant has requested to add language to condition number 5 under section 2 of the reso. And then we also have, for the record, the Director of Public Works to provide some documentation. Let's back up.
Please.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, members of the board. Ben Fernandez, 200 South Biscayne Boulevard, here on behalf of the applicant for PZ number 1. The change is simple. It's condition number 5. This is in relation to the Magic City Special Area Plan. This is the first.
Hold on.
Yes, sir.
You don't look like Melissa Tapinas. That's your applicants, Melissa Tapinas.
Oh, does it?
On behalf of Pelican Harbor,
That's PZ 2.
is this a rookie that you're training or what?
No, that's PZ 2.
PZ 2.
Mr. Fernandez is the one who hired me 20 years ago. So
Oh.
definitely not a rookie.
Okay.
If you like, we can bring back the owl.
He's not been trusting you enough as of late. I see.
So go ahead.
So as I was saying, this is the first component, the first subdivision approval for that special area plan. It's a 3-acre site. We're vacating an easement, public utility easement that runs through the property that's not necessary. Condition number 5, we are simply asking that you add language that says, or as permitted by the Magic City SAP Development Agreement. That condition says that you can't get a CO until all infrastructure improvements are completed. However, the development agreement contains a paragraph that allows adaptive reuse, existing structures to get a CO prior to all of the completion. It's a big project of all the infrastructure improvements. Everybody's in agreement with it. It's just for clarification purposes.
Thank you. Do I have a motion? Move it. Second? Me. All in favor? Aye.
As amended?
As amended.
Thank you.
Next item, PZ 2. Do I have a motion?
Move.
Second? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Which brings us to PZ 7. The title must be read into the
6.
record. I mean, PZ 6, I'm sorry.
I didn't get to see Lou Terminello today? Okay, well, we go to PC 6, you said, right?
Yes. Yes, 3, 4, and 5 have been deferred.
Okay.
PZ6, an ordinance of the Miami City Commission with attachments approving a development agreement attached and incorporated as Exhibit C between the City of Miami and the Most Reverend Thomas G. Wensky as Archbishop of the Archdiocese of Miami pursuant to Chapter 163 Florida statutes and is contemplated in a settlement agreement. Attached and incorporated as Exhibit D to govern development on the property located at approximately 3601, 3667, and 3675 South Miami Avenue, Florida, as more particularly described in Exhibits A and B, attached and incorporated collectively property, which is zoned civic institutional or CI, Transact Zone, authorizing the existing civic institutional uses located on a portion of the property, specifically 3601 and 3667 South Miami Avenue, Miami, Florida, as legally described in Exhibit A, to be expanded by up to and not to exceed 144,000 square feet beyond the existing floor area on site by right, and authorizing a portion of the property, specifically 3675 South Miami Avenue, Miami, Florida, as legally described in Exhibit B, to be developed with an 8-story building at a maximum height of 87 feet and to have an assisted living facility use only if developed in substantial compliance with the plans with approximately 189,575 square feet of floor area attached as Exhibit D of the development agreement. The property may be further developed with those uses and density permitted within the Civic Institutional CI zoning transect pursuant to Table 3, Article 4 of Ordinance Number 13114, the zoning ordinance of the City of Miami, Florida as amended under the existing zoning containing a severability clause and providing for an effective date.
Do I have a motion? Second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That brings us to PZ 8 and PZ 9. Chief, would you like to come before us and give us an update on the progress that you have made or not?
Chairwoman, thank you. Joseph Zaralbin, Fire Chief, Department of Fire Rescue. We met with Aspire along with our legal department and DREAM in order to come to some sort of resolution. And I can say that the meeting was very productive. We had good conversation, and the conversation was driven by one goal, and that is what is the best long-term outcome for the citizens of Miami. Not what is best for the fire department, not what is most convenient for the fire department, not even what is most convenient for the developer, but what works for the residents of Miami. And we did evaluate the property that was proposed, I believe, to all of you. And as I indicated previously, that is not the best answer when we're talking about decreasing response time and doing our absolute best to serve the citizens of Miami. But yes, sir.
I want to make sure it's clear. Is the property that they proposed to you that you've declined, is that the one that's got 7,500 square feet, the standalone lot?
I believe the address is 158 Southwest 7th Street.
Is that the same one?
Yes, sir.
What time did you meet with them? Or when?
Well, we showed up this morning for the hearing, and there was a motion, or the administration was going to defer the item.
Okay, this morning you showed up?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so it's after you met with me last night?
Yes, sir.
That's fine.
No, we had given them direction to go and talk to each other and see if they could come to some resolution.
All right, I'm sorry to have interrupted you, Chief.
No, not at all, sir. Thank you. So the resolutions that we have come up with and we have proffered, and Spencer is about to proffer today, is something that we believe works to the developer's benefit, works to the fire department's benefit, but again, most importantly, works to the benefit of the citizens of Miami. And I'll ask Spencer to enumerate them, and I'll comment as required. Thank you.
Okay.
Thank you, Chief. Thank you, Madam Chairman. Spencer Crowley, 98 Southeast 7th Street, for the applicant. We did show up this morning, as many of you know, ready to present, and we were asked to go back and work with fire on a resolution. So I'm not going to read this into the record. You all have the text. We've all agreed to it, but I just want to point out the highlights of our agreement. The first thing we've done is agreed to incorporate by reference the public benefits agreement and the temporary lease into the development agreement, and that's to make sure that these obligations run with the land and can't be terminated in the event that the property is transferred to another entity. We've agreed to make 4 changes to the temporary fire station lease. One, and I think the most important, is that we've agreed to provide continuity of service to the fire department. So in the interim, when our temporary station is erected and we're moving to build the permanent building, there was going to be a loss of service during that time. We've now agreed to provide that continuity of service. So once the temporary station is erected and in service, we're going to have that service for the whole duration. We've also agreed to cooperate with the fire department in terms of looking within a certain region of the northeast part of Brickell to see if there's any other fire station properties that may be available. And if we locate one and we evaluate it and it makes sense to fire, we'll switch gears and move the station from North Square to that site. Nothing required in that respect, but just an idea to cooperate. There's some other changes that we're making to the agreement regarding casualty and loss to make sure that in the event there's a hurricane, the previous language allowed us to potentially terminate the agreement with fire, and we're specifying that that is no longer the case, that we're cooperate to reestablish the service as soon as possible. We're also transferring the ownership of the improvements to fire once they take occupancy of the structures. One other point I think that's really important is that Swire has put a date or a time limit on when the temporary station will be operational, and that's 4 months from the date of the execution of the development agreement. So we're hoping it's sooner, but we're still at the whim of a couple of different permitting entities. And so as soon as we can get through that, we think we have about a 4-month window to permit, to construct this thing and get it certified for occupancy.
But
So-
where do we get the permanent station?
The permanent station will be in North Squared
When?
when we build that building.
That's years away.
And therein lied our challenge, Commissioner. All of the elements of what Spencer described are important, but probably the most important element, especially to the citizens of Miami, is the ongoing dialogue and good faith effort that this new agreement requires, in that we know that we have a space in North Square. We know that we are going to provide temporary services out of North Square. But what we don't know, to your point, is when North Square will ultimately come to fruition. So the good faith effort allows both Swire and the fire department and the city to go out and look in that geographical area for other locations, other options to build a station. If we find another option and it is agreeable to both parties, they will commence construction immediately. And that is again, to me as the fire chief, one of the most important elements of this, because it does give us options other than waiting for North Square to be developed sometime in the future.
The problem that I'm seeing here, Chief, is that land in that area, it is so expensive that I don't think you're going to find anything there that you're both going to agree to because of the expense involved. And what I don't understand is the 7,500-foot lot, it's only, at most, it could only be 2 blocks away. Why is that not acceptable, where they'll build a permanent one there?
It's more than 2 blocks away. It's probably about 4 blocks away. But more importantly, and these are the two critical factors, it's only about 4 blocks from an existing station that is very well staffed. But when you combine that with the knowledge of how these streets run, because there are many one-way streets going through that area, it would require going around the block in some cases to go in the direction that you need to go to the to the area that we're trying to serve. And when you compare the two, there's not much greater benefit than responding from Station 4. And recognizing that we build fire stations to last 50 to 75 years, we cannot afford to make a mistake that creates a fire station that becomes obsolete in a year.
So I guess one way to look at it, Commissioner, is that if we're able to find a lot that was, basically like the lot we talked about, but in a different location, a location that's suitable for fire, then we use that lot. And we abandoned the North Squared idea, but we have the North Squared. That's there, that's gonna happen. We're just not sure exactly when. For the temporary station, we now have a time period for it. So 4 months from the date of execution, we have to deliver it.
Madam Chair? I'm sorry.
It still doesn't make sense to me, but, if this is what you're recommending, have you looked at all, or has the fire department, Dream, looked at anything out there that could potentially be bought or negotiated for?
We're working together with Swire on that and
Yeah,
just
but-
looking at all of the options
but-
within the geographical boundary that we've provided
Yeah,
them.
but that's not my question, Chief. My question is, have you looked at anything yet?
We have not looked at any property as of yet, no.
So we have no idea if there's anything out there, which, like I said, I think it's going to be very difficult to find something that is not going to be in the multi-million dollar level.
And Commissioner, you may be right, but what this does do that the last agreement didn't do is it gives us options, and it gives us hopefully viable options that we can use in order to secure a station sooner than the timeframe that it will take to ultimately build on North Square.
Has the applicant given you a ceiling of how high they will go, what they will spend? Will they spend $50 million to build this fire station?
The agreements aren't capped at cost. We really have specifications included, and as long as, you know, the parties agree that we have a suitable location and the specifications are met, we can proceed.
Commissioner Russell?
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chief, for working on this together with the administration and the applicant. When this third option, this new property was proffered, I felt much like Commissioner Carollo that this was a magic wand solution, deus ex machina, that just came out of the air and was going to solve everything. It looked like the right size, it had the right specifications. So for the chief to have this option before him as a turnkey move now permanent station and still say no, I very much believe that this must not be the right solution from their level to be willing to revert back to this concept, but embellish it to where it is now what they need for continuity of service, a temporary station that comes sooner, and of course the eventual permanent on North Square or wherever else can be agreed. But that is a very valuable property that they proffered. So that being said, I am open to moving the two items with the amended proffer here, and so that they can move forward.
We need to read the titles into the record
Yes, ma'am.
before we can take a vote.
In ordinance PZ 8, an ordinance of the Miami City Commission amending Appendix E, Brickell City Center Area Plan, BCC SAP, of ordinance number 13114, the zoning ordinance of the City of Miami as amended, Miami 21 Code, to approve the Fourth Amendment to the previously approved BCC SAP, to make provision for the one BCC signature office development, an alternate concept for the one BCC parcel, which may utilize certain design flexibilities that include larger tower floor plates for the property generally located at 799 Brickell Plaza, 700 Brickell Avenue, and 710 Brickell Avenue, containing a severability clause and providing for an effective date. PZ 9, an ordinance of the Miami City Commission with attachments recommending approval of a third amendment to a previously approved development agreement pursuant to Chapter 163 Florida statutes between Swire Properties, Inc., applicant, affiliated parties, and the City of Miami, Florida City by modifying the existing SAP regulating plan as amended and design guidelines to reflect certain revised building parameters for the one BCC signature office concept located at approximately 700 Brickell Avenue, 710 Brickell Avenue, and 799 Brickell Plaza, Miami, Florida, as more particularly described in Exhibit A, attached and incorporated to make provision for the one BCC signature office development, an alternate concept for the one BCC parcel, which may utilize certain design flexibilities that include larger tower floor plates, authorizing the city manager to negotiate and execute the development agreement in a form acceptable to the city attorney for said purpose, containing a severability clause and providing for an effective date.
I have a motion and a second. I just want to make sure this is what you believe to be the fairest option at this moment?
Yes, Madam Chair, make no mistake, if I thought that the best thing for the citizens was to build on 158 Southwest 7th Street, I would be pushing for that. But when I look at the long-term growth of the city, and I look at the area of Brickell that we need to serve, in addition to what we already serve with Fire Station 4, I believe this is the best decision.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye,
And for the record, PZ9 as amended?
As amended.
as amended. That will conclude the City of Miami Commission meeting
Thank you all.
for September 22nd, 2022.
Thank you.
We will resume at 5:05 p.m. for our second budget hearing. Thank you, everyone.
You have done a great job.